Hello everyone and welcome to CareersTalk. I am Suran Sharma, an agile consultant based in Netherlands, and today we are going to discuss senior Scrum Master interview questions asked as TCS USA shared by our WhatsApp group member. And to help us with the answer, we have invited Arthur. He is a PSM3, PSPO3, and PMP certified, working as an agile coach based in Latvia. So, friends, before we begin, if you are new here, please subscribe to our channel. We have tons of valuable content for you. And if you find value in this session, please hit that like button. So without further delay, let's get started. Welcome, Arthur, and thank you for giving your time today, Arthur. Over to you, Arthur.
Thank you, Sunan. Thank you for having me. I'm a big fan of Career Talks myself, so I was very surprised when you reached out to me. So yeah,
Wonderful.
as you said, I'm a PSM3, PSPO3, and PMP certified Agile coach, Scrum Master. Been in Agile business for over 8+ years, something like that. Been doing everything related to Agile. So thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful, wonderful. So if you allow, shall we start, Arthur?
Yeah.
Okay. So here comes the very first question that assume you are working in an organization where senior leadership is not clear about the benefits of agile. So they are concerned about losing control and predictability. So how would you demonstrate the value of agile to the leadership and gain their buy-in, Arthur?
Yeah. So this is a very common issue and problem Scrum Masters are actually encountering. From my experience, I had a very specific thing that happened in my life that taught me a very good lesson. I was in a company that had numerous products. Some of them were very successful, and some of them were kind of making money, but they were forgotten, if you will. So imagine a product that is just making you a revenue, but you're not ready to invest anything into it. So I had a conversation with my product owner about it as I saw a lot of kind of unrealized value in that product. And we kind of brainstormed. I coached the product owner a little bit about benchmarking the competition. And we came up with this small roadmap and kind of idea on how we would make the product a little bit better. So the stakeholders were and the leadership team, the C-level management were very skeptical about it because if you're coming from the position of, hey, give me money and maybe something is going to happen, they're not going to buy in. There's not going to be any buy-in. So what we did is we kind of broke it down into those small milestones and we said, okay, so if you can give us a little bit of a way to demonstrate to you that we can bring you value really early on by doing these small experiments and confirm these experiments, just to get you to understand what we're trying to build here. And if you like it, we can have a broader conversation. So we presented this roadmap, which was, if I'm not mistaken, it was like 2.5 years big project of numerous improvements and value delivery. But we kind of said, okay, we want to start here. Let's just make an assumption and let's just confirm, like validate this assumption. And it was 2 to 3 sprints, like 2-week sprints. So it's 3 2-week sprints in which we did some small iterations and small delivery by bringing life back to one of the products that was kind of just laying there. And it was very successful because with those small things that we added, the customers were starting to kind of buy more, leaving like it was an e-commerce shop historically. So they were increasing the average purchase amount by these small, like plus $20, plus $10 here, $5. But overall, the sum grew, and we explained that we're not doing the regular, this huge investment that you have to put in and just try to hope that by the end of the project something's going to happen. We did these small iterations, and every time we did a lot of data gathering, a lot of A/B testing, a lot of checking whether our assumptions are correct. So by explaining this to the C-level management, that you don't have to invest a lot of money as like the regular your regular project approach, like the waterfalls. You can do small experiments and validate. And if you're wrong, you can still learn and maybe do a 180 and do the direct opposite of what you just did. Maybe just to, if you made a mistake, that's fine, learn from it. That's what Agile is about making the mistakes and validating that you're wrong, and maybe learning from it and making the correct kind of assumptions. It was very, very fun to see how it was basically like one of those Scrooge McDuck kind of moments when you saw the dollar signs in their eyes. Oh yeah, we're increasing the revenue. We like that. We love that. And by having these conversations and maybe easing their anxiety of, no, you don't have to pay a lot. Just let's start small. Let's prove that we're going the right direction. And every single iteration, once you do those demos, once you do those sprint reviews and you gather the feedback early on, you kind of they start to see, okay, so we don't have to wait that long to see the results. So once we got that buy-in and they kind of got in that we not only we're doing the good thing for them and not only they don't have to invest a lot of money, the level of trust in the eyes of the stakeholders grows over time. Like every single sprint, you could see that they trust you more and more and more. And as a scrum master at that point, my job was to kind of empower the product owner to make the right decision. It was very volatile because if you would make a wrong decision early on, it would be a fail. So you have to kind of go with them and explain and trust the teams. So that's kind of my experience with this. I think it was very eye-opening in a sense because you have to build that level of trust every single time, but it was very interesting. That's kind of how I did it.
Wonderful, Arthur. Thank you for sharing that experience with all of us. Okay, let's move on to the next question. And this one is a little interesting. Honestly, like I've not seen this question so far. I have done so many podcasts so far, but I've not seen this question. So the question is that you are coaching a team that has been using Agile for some time now, but has grown comfortable and they stopped focusing on getting better. Means like they're not thinking about continuous improvement. So what method or what different ways would you use to renew the team dedication to improving and try the new ideas, Arthur?
Yeah, this is a
When
good and
people
tough.
are get very comfortable whatever they are using,
So let's just, yeah, this is a great question. It's a very powerful, and I believe a lot of Scrum Masters might not talk about it, but they have it at some point in their life. I had a similar situation. The team was fairly mature in their place, and they were delivering constantly, and they were, they had this trust among the team, and I would say they're very mature in the sense that they know what needs to be done. And as a matter of fact, they worked with a product owner to help them make the backlog better, the groom. However, we did kind of hit this plateau where we were talking more about, so there was this bug during the sprint. I don't know, we shouldn't just maybe change a little bit in the testing and whatnot. There is no real improvement on the horizon. Like I felt like either they're so mature that they don't even need a scrum master at this point. But what I did a little bit of an experiment where I took another team's team lead, and I just asked him like, can you join kind of our dailies? Can you come in and give us your perspective? Like if you would be joining this team, how would you do these things, right? But this was more from the position of, can you challenge my team? Can you put them a little bit outside of their comfort zone? Can you ask questions, more technical questions that I wouldn't be able to ask? So at first I had this like kind of pushback. What are you trying to do? But it was a small experiment, and as a result, what we've heard is that the approach that our team was doing with the code reviews and what they the way they did it, it was more of a position from, we used to do it that way, and that's the only way how we know it. Because I'm not as technical as I wish I could be to give that feedback to them. That's why I kind of asked the leader from another team, and he basically flipped everything on its head in a sense. So he kind of highlighted, so not only they were doing things wrong in his view. I'm not saying the team was doing it wrong; they were doing it their way, but there's like either a better way or there's like a huge improvement kind of bucket. So he kind of started pinpointing this, and I would do things differently here and here and here, and improvement here. And as a result, the team felt like they kind of opened the Pandora box of oh my God, we have so much things we need to do. And this is this is why I'm usually kind of trying to rotate people from teams like once in a year, maybe once in 2 years, just to get that fresh perspective, just to see how things are doing, like happening on in a different teams. Because what usually happens is, from my experience, is when you're working in one team and you're working with the developers that you know so well, and you feel as if they're your family, or as if they're very close friends. Let's say you're working in a team for 5 years, you know everyone. I do believe that life kind of starts to kick off outside of your comfort zone. So if you're a backend developer, you would become a better developer if you look a little bit at the front end, a little bit. I'm not saying start doing front end. I'm just saying explore. Maybe be a little bit of a T-shaped developer, right? Start looking at something's differently. Maybe start looking at testing. And when this happens, when you kind of rotate people a little bit, in this case, I'm just adding a person, just observe, give their perspective. What would they do differently? If that would be their team, how would they approach to this, like this team's way of working? And not all of the comments that the senior developer gave me were valid, because things, the processes that are there for a reason. So he doesn't have all of the perspective, right? But a lot of knowledge that he put in, like with the code reviews and everything, they were very valuable. And we kind of, as I said, we opened the Pandora box, and it was like, wow, we can do this and this and this. And we can add AI for the code review, and we can do this, and we can start testing differently. Usually, so to sum it up, usually what I do is, like, I try to bring the team outside of the comfort zone by bringing a new talent in, the fresh perspective, someone new. That's kind of my experience with this. But again, this is a really tough and good question.
Yeah, thank you, Arthur, for sharing that perspective. Wonderful. Okay, let's move on. So let's say your organization wants to combine DevOps practices with the agile team to speed
Yeah.
up the delivery and to improve the quality of the work. So how would you help with this particular integration, and how do you going to deal with any cultural or the technical issues that may come up, Arthur?
Yeah, so I had this one particular experience with CDCI in a way that I was working for a company that was doing deployments once every, I believe, once or twice a year. And it was fun, but the problem with this is that you can't, when you're talking with the leadership team, I'm like, how are you getting your feedback loop from the customers? How are you getting that information? And the way that I suggested is we build a small project, like a small proof of concept, and where we can start applying the CI/CD pipeline and start deploying instantly for maybe one customer. As usually this is like the most loyal customer. So if things go wrong, at least the customer gives you this feedback, and he is on your side, because you both want to have this improvement. It was fairly successful. It didn't grow out because there was limitations with the system, but this proof of concept kind of explains that you can give things to the customer earlier, and you can get this feedback loop earlier, instead of releasing once every or twice a year, specifically in an environment nowadays where technology is so hectic that you can fairly say that you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? Like a couple of years ago, we didn't have AI. AI came in, boom, you have to adapt so early. And if you have these releases so rarely during the year, you can't adapt to the changes to the market as early as you want. So that is kind of what I did. It was interesting as an experiment. Unfortunately, it didn't work, but I mean, I wish it would. So that's kind of how I did it.
Yeah. Thank you, Arthur, for that. Okay, let's move on. And this is pretty fun question, I would say. So let's imagine that you have a special superpower as a Scrum Master. So first of all, what would be that superpower? And once you have that superpower, how you're going to use it? Maybe if you can share, like, what are the major problems you are going to fix with the help of that superpower, Arthur?
Oh, Well, right. So I think the biggest kind of problem that a superpower would help is helping people see through the other person's eyes. Because as Scrum Masters, what usually one of the biggest responsibilities that we have is these conflict resolutions and conflict mitigations where usually where you have to be very objective about this because you have a lot of working like on a minefield because you don't want to you want to go out from the conflicts in a win-win situation and you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So in an example of, let's say, two developers have a conflict of how to do a thing, right? How to deliver something. Um, the way I usually do this, I try to kind of dehumanize this conflict. I want to point out to the both developers that you don't actually hate one another. Let's be very clear here. What you have is disconnect on the approaches to the same solution, right? So you want to have the same thing. You want to keep your stakeholders happy. You want a product owner to be very proud. You want your team to be very proud about your increment. So what people are kind of very difficult at is they're very their mindset is in a position of I'm right, you're wrong. It doesn't matter what you're saying, right? So if I could have a superpower, I would kind of switch your view. I would kind of try to for you to be able to see through the other person's eyes, if that makes sense. Like, why is this person why is he or she trying to deliver it this way, right? So you kind of get the other person's perspective. It's more of a skill, I believe. People can learn to do that, but it's very tough. It's a very kind of difficult and tough situation. So if I could speed that up just by click of a finger, all right, now you both understand conflict resolve. I would love it. It would save me, a couple of gray hairs. I would say that way.
Great, Arthur. So, similar kind of question was asked in one of the interview,
Mhm.
and then I gave the kind of similar answer that if I have some kind of superpower, then I want to see the future. So I know,
Mhm.
like, okay, what are the challenges or the issues which is about to come in front of my team, and I can, help them or guide them and warn them that okay, these things are coming, and then you can prepare yourself and things like that. So that's really going to make everyone lives easy. So that's
Oh
the
yeah,
answer. That's the answer which I have used in that particular interview.
I like
Okay.
yours better. I like yours better.
So that will save everyone's life. Okay, cool. Let's move on. So let's say you join a company with a strong top-down culture, like
Yeah.
hierarchical culture, and of course that goes against the agile value. So how would you go about changing the culture to be more agile, focus on teamwork and giving the employees that count of accountability and the responsibility, Arthur?
Yeah. So this problem is very close to my heart because the country that I'm living, the place where I'm living, it's very common to have this issue in the company. A little less so now once we get more like international, working with more international customers, but a lot of companies are still functioning this way. And this hierarchical kind of approach, top to bottom, very vertical, is extremely common. So the way I'm tackling this is I'm focusing on building trust. As again, with the small, very minuscule experiments, I would say what was the most successful one was we had a company where there were project managers and you had your regular managers and everyone was reporting to everyone. And at the bottom, like not bottom, but the people who the developers were reporting to one and second and third and reporting times and whatnot. It was very crazy. So when I started this agile kind of change the agile way of working, I had a lot of conversations like, what am I supposed to do from project managers directly? What am I supposed to do now? Like, if you don't want me on a daily, so what am I supposed to do now? And my kind of when I'm challenging these people, I'm like, is your job only to be on these dailies? Is your job only to sit next to a developer and look what they're doing? Because that's not really a job, right? This is not what you're supposed to be doing. So we had this kind of agreement with these project managers and with the CEOs and CDOs and whatnot, where we're going to do a sprint with a first sprint, right, on the second sprint, and we're going to start demonstrating you at the end of the sprint what is the expected outcome. So we set the expectation, we show the sprint backlog of what are we going to deliver. And I was very adamant about we don't want people on our dailies. As a matter of fact, even the product owner who was project manager, but we had to recoach him to be a product owner. I said even to him, like, we don't want you there because this is not your job. We just started, and this is where the power dynamic kind of started shifting a little bit. The developers kind of felt, all right, so we're on our own, right? You trust us to do our thing finally. And you see this kind of, wow, cool. So they started working, and when you are showing at the end at the sprint review that not only the developers actually delivered the sprint goal, and they did it more because they're not micromanaged. Because when a person is micromanaged, they usually are kind of during the sprint planning, they're trying to kind of count the hours basically up to the maximum of filling those hours. But once you give them time and you trust them and you don't ask them the status report every time, they actually have more time to work. And this kind of shifted this paradigm a little bit where, oh, okay, so the team can be siloed and they can work on their own if you trust them, which was very kind of eye-opening to the organization, where we started working with the project managers who themselves to be kind of shifting more towards the product owner roles and have their own teams. Now that you've seen that this experiment is very successful and they actually see the value delivery, they started kind of creating these, instead of kind of top to bottom, they started like, they still have the management and the C-level suit. Obviously, you can't work without that. But it's more of a silo here, silo here. This team is delivering this. This delivery is responsible for this. And it was very successful. It was, I mean, not without its problems. Obviously, it was like 2 to 3 year transformation. But it was very interesting to see how this trust in the developers that they actually know what they're doing, right? Kind of started shifting. The way I usually explain to these kind of project managers or even the regular managers who are against these changes, I bring this example of, if you ever owned a car, you don't tell the mechanic how to fix the car, right? You're not standing over the shoulder and like looking at the tubes and whatnot. I'm like, you trust them to be, great at what they're doing. Otherwise, things are not going to work in our society. So it's the same thing. You trust the developers; they're going to deliver what they said they do. If everything is like, if the tickets are good and if you have everything correct. So there are a lot of ifs and a lot of unknowns, but at the end of the day, it was very interesting to see how once you show that there's other ways of working, like built on this trust and on this like small community of developers, people are actually starting to be open. But again, this is with everything. Like you do a small experiment and you show them that you can deliver, that there is like you build a hypothesis and you confirm it to them, and then they are kind of, they don't have the weapons. They have to confirm that yes, this is working. So that's my experience. It was tough. It was very interesting, tough. I learned a lot. I guess it was one of those moments where I actually saw myself going 150% of like being like an agile coach, like actually working with every individual every day. Oh, now a lot of memories.
Might be so exhausting for you.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. Cool. Thank you for that.
yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to the next one. And next one is on the product owner. So let's suppose that you are working with a product owner who is struggling to prioritize the backlog, and maybe the communication is also a problem. Maybe he just joined the team, or he's just, not from
Mhm.
that background. So how are you going to coach the product owner to improve their skills and better
Yeah,
support the agile teams?
yeah. So this is a very interesting. So this is a good. I highly recommend Scrum Masters or people who are starting to learn Scrum to actually seek out this problem, because it's a very unique approach every single time. There is no silver bullet, but when I have had this situation, what I think usually happens is that the product owners are struggling because they don't really understand the business. That's my kind of number one assumption. Because if you are in a position of a product owner, you need to know the product. You need to be aware. Ideally, if you were a user of this product, it helps tremendously. But if you are just coming in as a product owner to the organization and there are certain expectations from you, right? The team is waiting for you to prioritize the backlog, to refine the tickets, to give them the business answers. The business is expecting you to satisfy the stakeholders, expecting you to satisfy their needs, right? The marketing, the infrastructure, everyone is expecting something of you. And when you don't know how to do that, the Scrum Master is like your second in line, your right hand who's supposed to help you. What I did is I actually I helped, did a little bit, like agreed with the workshop for using this product, like how to, what are we doing? What is the stream in our organization is kind of working in? What industry, and how are we trying to deliver value to this industry? How are we getting revenue from that industry? Just so you get this clear picture. Once that is done, I tend to have these conversations with business as close as possible. I'm forcing the product owner in every single meeting that the C-level is having, just so they get these business gears running, understanding how can we increase the value? Is it the revenue, or is it the stability of the platform? Something that you can understand, where are we struggling right now? Because if your job is to deliver value, and let's say you are a product owner who's only running after the ROI, right? This is the only thing on your mind. You're going to forget about the technical depth, and you're going to forget about the platform's stability or performance and whatnot. And this is not a great position to be in. You're going to be in so much trouble if you're going to be that type of a product owner. So what I did is I put them in the business calls. I sat with him and I explained, okay, so now we're going to go and talk with the technical architecture. So just so you understand their position of problems, right? And once you get all of those cells to talk with marketing, talk with the developers themselves, obviously they are overwhelmed. So in those calls, I asked them to, can you help the product owner prioritize your specific niche, right? So if it's marketing, what would be like your top 3 things that you're trying to deliver? What do you need from us? And you have conversation with a technical architect, and you have a conversation with basically every stakeholder. That kind of starts their gears spinning a little bit, in a sense of, okay, I understand their need. And from what I gather with the technical architect, our platform is pretty stable. It's safe. It's stable. There are a lot of wants, obviously, like refinement, technical depth, and whatnot. But it's not as as a priority. What type of kind of what are we trying to deliver in Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4? Then after that, what usually is um, like as myself as a product owner, what worked for me, and I kind of tried to encourage in that situation, is I use kind of combination of several priority techniques, in a sense. So obviously we all know Moscow, right? Moscow is like usually the go-to. What I did, I combined Moscow with I believe it was called Eisenhower matrix, where it's 2 by 2, the level of effort versus the value delivered, right? So, and we kind of took everything that was in M, right, the must-haves, and we mapped it together on how easy or difficult it would be to deliver for us. And then, like with this kind of speeding through the process of what is that we are trying to deliver, it gets a little bit clearer. you kind of obviously have to teach them about the acceptance criteria because the developers are going to ask a lot of questions. But there's no silver bullet. A lot of product owners are just kind of upholding the status quo. That's what I don't like. This is where you get a product owner who just, well, what did the previous product owner did, right? And they go through the documentation that the previous product owner did, and they're just trying to keep up with the same thing. But that doesn't work. The previous product owner is not there for a reason. So what I'm usually doing, I'm like, let's try our own thing. Let's try something new and see whether that works. And find your own way how you would do it instead of just upholding this. So it was interesting, tough and crazy, but I approached to this situation how I would do it being a product owner, and it felt like I'm not really coaching the person. I'm working more as a peer. Like, this is how I would do it. Do you think this is good? Would you do it this way? It was interesting. I highly recommend Scrum Masters to kind of put more effort and more kind of their view on working with product owners. Maybe come to the product owner on challenging them. Think as a product owner. That would help you a lot, because a lot of Scrum Masters are just working with the team, with the developers, and kind of neglecting that it's their job to support and empower product owners, coach them even if necessary. So this is where I'm kind of, I'm kind of helping out a little bit.
Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful, Arthur. Thank you for that elaborated
Yeah.
answer. Okay.
These are great questions.
Okay. I intentionally have chosen all these questions for you. Okay, so let's move on. So let's say your organization wants to measure how mature its agile practices across several teams, across organizations. So how would you perform this assessment? And what are the different matrices, KPIs, or indicators would you use to evaluate the maturity?
Oh yeah, this is a tough one. So whilst I'm a very data-driven person myself, I am very cautious when organizations are starting to talk about the measurements, the KPIs, the assessments and whatnot. What my go-to approach, usually talking with the upper management when they're asking how is the team performing, I'm always going to ask that the number one thing that usually is the most important metric is stakeholder satisfaction. That is my number one go-to. So what I usually do is to assess the team's maturity is I'm gonna do a survey, or usually the survey is running what I'm kind of, I don't want to say forcing, but I'm kind of highly encouraging the organization to run the stakeholder satisfaction kind of questionnaires and whatnot. There's a lot of ways to do that. But basically, the question is, if the stakeholders are happy, if they're happier than they were before, that means the team is doing kind of more correct work, right? So if I had an unfortunate experience where we had a situation where the people were asking about velocity and the story points per sprint. It was up in arms conversation where I said, this is the worst thing that you can do. This is literally the worst thing. This is not going to tell you anything ever except the historical data of, all right, so this was a different type of work, and this was more complex type of work in this sprint, and more complex type in this. So if we have, going back to the conversation, to the question, if we have this stakeholder satisfaction level, then we can compare it to how satisfied the team is. Because if the team is happy, in a sense, they feel safe, they feel valued, the organization let them experiment, and the organization lets them do type of work that they're interested in and passionate about. Then this is the data that you would want to have. Because the other side of the coin is, what would be the numbers that you can, as a manager, if we're playing devil's advocate in this situation, what type of numbers do you want to see to understand that the team is mature enough? Is it the number of bugs per sprint? Because that's not going to tell you anything. That's just going to tell you how good that we are testing, right? Is it the speed of delivery? Again, that doesn't tell you about maturity. So there's no real kind of silver bullet. That's why I'm usually pushing to this. Are the stakeholders happier than they were before? Yes, that means we're doing a better job. Would you agree? And that the organization is obviously coming to this conclusion because that makes sense. And if the team is happy and the stakeholders are happy, then we're doing the best we can. We can be better. Obviously, there's no level of you can do way better always, but we're doing a good job. And compared to the previous surveys, we are doing better. So we are in a better place. That is how I usually assess. Again, there are a couple of things that you can kind of, as a more senior Scrum Master, you could say, do you need to go to the dailies with them? Do they resolve the problems on their own? These are small things. These things are gonna tell you whether the team is self-managed more, whether they know how to solve their own problems. But maturity is not only about self-management. There are a lot of layers. So you can pinpoint a little things that you can improve as a Scrum Master with a team, but overall team maturity is way more than that. That's how I usually do it.
Great, Arthur. Thank you for that. Okay, let's move on. So let's say you are being assigned to introduce agile practices to an non-IT teams, like non-IT departments like marketing or HR. So
Yeah.
how would you adjust agile way of working to fit their specific needs and the different workflows?
Yeah.
Arthur?
Yeah. I actually had this situation where we had to do with this one small company. There was a department for marketing in which I was starting to become a Scrum Master of sorts, but we were not. I wouldn't say it was Scrum in a sense, but they were not even a product owner, but it was more of so it was, I believe it was program owner or something like that. Marketing program owner. So what we did is we had the same approach where what do we need to deliver this specific marketing program to the customer, right? What are the necessary steps? What are the things that we need to deliver? And the team was ready to be responsible about the delivery itself. And it's the same kind of approach where we have a list of things that we need to do, and the team itself knows their place in a sense of what they are responsible. And they kind of take their work, and we're trying to do it in iterations just so we can adapt to the customer's needs, because the feedback loop is way more frequent there. They're doing the feedback loop basically on an ongoing work in a sense, because there's a lot of redoing some marketing material on the fly, if that makes sense. So what we had is we had these dailies, but every second day we did some kind of whip work in progress demos in a sense. So just so we can have this feedback loop even faster. It was successful. A lot of ongoing changes. The team wanted to change really fast. It was from the position of, we can change this process a little bit just so we can get a better feedback from the customer. Maybe sending it on the fly, maybe demoing and whatnot. It was interesting. However, I did had a very interesting conversation with one of my peers that was explaining on how he's an agile coach in U.S. Army. And to me, it was a little bit of a shock at the beginning, because I would never think that you can be an agile coach in the U.S. Army. And the more we had this conversation, the more he explained where he's like, if you're not going to be agile in the Army, you're going to lose, right? And he explained all of these small experiments and working more closely with the stakeholders on the things is crucial, and it wouldn't work any other way. And the same similar thing happened to my previous colleague, who said that she was a scrum master in pharmacy. Also the same way, where you are taking a small chunk of work and you're working on it and you're demonstrating it and you're gathering the feedback. So I had a very interesting conversation with one PST, Ty Crockett, a very good friend of mine, who said that at this point, Agile Manifesto should change the word software to a product, because it is used in way more broad spectrum of industries, not only software delivery at this point, because it's so successful. I think Agile 2.0 kind of touched it a little bit, but I don't quote me on that though. So that's kind of my experience with it.
Okay, wonderful, Arthur. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. So, let's say you work or your organization operate in a highly regulated industry with strict
Yeah.
compliance rules. So how would you modify again these agile practices to ensure that compliance while still staying flexible, the agile way of working? So this is like a kind of sort of connected questions to the previous one, but I think it's a little bit different.
It is, and it's let me tell you a story. So in one of my projects, in my experience, I worked with treasury of my country, and so it was extremely regulated. There were NDA on the NDA and the security compliance and clearances every step of it. There were more security compliance than there was actual development. However, what we did is we had there was a lot of coaching from myself to the recipient, because it was a very waterfally approach. Because in highly regulated deliveries, what you will most likely have, by definition of the word of highly regulated, you're going to have a fixed scope and you have a fixed budget most likely. So what we did is we worked in a hybrid approach. Those who read on PMP learn a little bit more about how the hybrid works. But basically the idea is very similar, where you have it's a waterfall approach, but you're still working in iterations and you are demonstrating things to the customer. You're not releasing them, because they are expecting the regulations themselves, expecting a full working function, and they can only assess those regulations at the end, right? So what we did is we had two product owners, one product owner on our side who was working with the product owner on their side, and their team was responsible for the QA and confirming that everything was correct and confirming that everything was done according to the regulations that were applied in the first place. But what we did is we demonstrated what we've done so far very early on, and we had numerous environments on which we were working. So we gave one of the environments to the testing team, just so they can work with us on these compliances and help us mitigate these problems early on. And it was very successful in a way, because we were able to shift and move and confirm that we comply to these requirements early on. And it actually sort of resulted that we figured out that we have to hire this specific it was ISO certified guy who knew this very niche thing for the security compliance. We had to hire him early on, just because the QA team said, well, this doesn't work. You guys need to do better, and you guys need to do this and this. But again, at the end, it was a waterfall-y in a sense, because you have to deliver it at the end as one product. But what this helps you early on is that we did not have to spend a lot of money on at the end on teaching the customer how to use this new product, because the whole QA team and the product owner was in it from the beginning, putting the business people together. It was very successful. I think I still had like a recommendation letter from them somewhere because they were we finished it faster and they were very, happy with the end result.
Wonderful, Arthur, for sharing
Yeah.
that real-time story with all of us. Okay, so we have one more question, Arthur, though we are
Yeah.
just touching the time of 1 hour, but if you allow, shall I ask you that question?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So the question is that senior management is using agile matrices, for
Yeah.
example, velocity. I think you just also mentioned
Yeah.
in a wrong way, like they are pressurizing team to deliver more, story points over the period of time to increase their velocity and things like that.
Yeah.
So, how would you address these kind of issues and teach the management the correct way to use agile matrices, or not even use
Oh yeah.
agile matrices in a
Oh
way?
yeah. Yeah. So I love this question. I want to point out that I know you are very, very active in Agile community, and on LinkedIn there was a story about a Scrum Master who went to an interview, and they were having this interview with a product owner, and the product owner said that I, I don't want to butcher, but it was something along the lines that it is a universal standard that the team must deliver 42 story points per sprint. And if you're not doing that, if your team didn't do it, your team is bad and you were doing Scrum wrong or something like that. This question kind of reminds me of this. So the velocity and story points is, to me, they're destructive. They bring next to no value. They have some value in a sense of where you can kind of take a look at if your velocity is going down and down and down and down and down. I can make a case of having a conversation with a team on why do they think this is happening. Usually, maybe are you breaking your stories, or are you breaking your tasks into smaller tasks, or did we stop doing that? Why did we stop doing that? What's going on there? But I would point out the team needs to come to that conclusion themselves. You can kind of guide them towards that. And maybe if team is saying there's no problem with that, they feel more comfortable, or they feel more brave and courageous in estimating their work, if they do estimation even, then there is no problem. However, when you have these conversations with the management of those agile metrics, which they're not really, um, what I usually ask is, what are you trying to assess with these numbers? I understand that management will want to have predictability, but that is not what Agile is about. And I'm going to go and I'm going to push. I know that it is scary, and I know that you want predictability, but you can't have both. You can't be agile and be predictable in a sense. I want to point out one thing, that there is a YouTube channel called Thriving Technologist, and the guy is extremely knowledgeable about all the agile history, and he actually has a very long topic about this, where um, if you want to be predictable, and if you're using your metrics to predict the outcome in the Q2 and Q3, and just make assumptions whether we can do it or not, you're never going to be agile. What you're doing is you're actually going against the principles themselves, where the the agility and the business agility of it is that it's there to prove that you are wrong, because you want to have experiments, and you can't have predictability and experiments at the same time. You can have on assumptions. So to answer the question a little bit kind of more concise of is, I'm going to ask, what type of metrics are you using? If you're using velocity, what are you trying to derive from that? Why are you using that? Because it is a historical data. It is not a predictable data. If you want to use more, if the management says, well, we need the KPIs, and we need some data, some numbers for the KPIs, I would point them out towards evidence-based management that Scrum kind of has. It is a complementary practice, but it is a really good practice because it gives you indexes. It gives you, again, team satisfaction is one of the good ones. If you want to have the delivery quality of the delivery, or how good are we at delivering? Again, pointing out of the previous question, let's ask stakeholders, are they happier? Let's ask stakeholders, are they more satisfied with the delivery? Are you deliveries? So are you delivering what you wanted for the stakeholders? Is the marketing or infrastructure better than they were before? These are the numbers you need. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of like those regular classical project management approaches where we can ask questions. Is our time to market better? Is our quality better? Because quality, again, is in the hands of the developers. But it's all about those value-based metrics, and EBM supports a lot of them. So I would point towards that. And I did a lot of workshops, and we kind of shift the paradigm in organization a little bit, where we checked the technical depth. We checked whether our developers are happier than what they were before. These are the numbers you should be worried about. You don't need to think about velocity. It's not going to tell you anything, really. So maybe so customer satisfaction or cycle times and these type of things help. Again, but this is a question to like a very specific, what type of metrics, what type of answers or are you looking for, or what type of questions are you asking? Because these velocity is never going to give you.
True. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Arthur, for sharing that perspective. And thank you for being with us and sharing your knowledge, Arthur, today.
I thank you
Friends,
so much for inviting me. I'm really excited to be.
wonderful. And friends, we hope that you found this session helpful and informative. So if you enjoyed this session, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. And we hope to see you in our next session. Until take care. This is Suran Sharma signing off. Thank you, everyone, and bye-bye. And thank you, Arthur, one more time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.